Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining our webcast today. I'm going to try to move quickly and cover some decent ground, but still have some time afterwards for questions. As David mentioned, you can ask questions during the webcast, and he'll interrupt if they're kind of in the context of what I'm talking about. Otherwise, we'll hold them to the end. But you'll have the option to do both kind of questions during and afterwards. So today, this webcast will come in 3 parts. The first, I'm just going to cover some concepts for you all to consider as you think about scaling out your conservation programs. And during this part, I'm going to touch briefly on an important concept of system of record. And then I'll get into telling some stories and some examples of creating tools that have helped folks like yourselves scale out their conservation programs. And then we will finish with just a period of questions and answers, and hopefully leave some ample time for that, because I think sometimes that's the most interesting part of these webcasts. Let's get going. So when you start thinking and talking about tools, it's pretty easy to get distracted by the shiny objects, the pretty maps, the interactive charts, the visualizations, and so on. However, we've certainly found that the best tools aren't worth a whole lot if they're not designed and wielded in the service of your program's goals and objectives. Now, these goals and objectives can be expressed pretty simply in a half-page document that simply bullets out your goals and objectives, or for the daring, you can even number those goals and objectives so that there's some semblance of ranking or prioritization. Or they can be fully expressed in terms of theories of change that are supported by logic chains that are complete, have complete descriptions of threats and intermediate results and indicators, all leading up to an attainment of the target. If there are folks listening that are interested in the latter, that's topic of a whole other webcast. We do a fair amount of work with the open standards for the practice of conservation, and we think it's a great way to add a lot of rigor to your program, but also recognize that some folks aren't ready to make that leap. And but even if they're not, we'd like to start by making sure that any work that we do and any investments they make in data management infrastructures are grounded in these things. So next is making sure you have real strong and clear science guidance. If most programs need to have some type of science underpinning, and some of them have highly disciplined independent scientific review panels, and others just have more casual, occasional scientific advice. And I think all that we're pointing out as system builders, as tool builders, is before you start investing in tools, spend at least a couple hours thinking about how your scientific community can be best served by your investments. How might they interact with tools to help you scale your program and get the most out of your investment? And then last, and probably the most important, is making sure that you all, everyone going into the project, has a commitment to change. You know, we often say that creating an elegant data model, or writing great code, or really designing a compelling user experience is kind of the easy part, and the hard part's the human factor. And these tools and data management require a change in the way people do work. We try hard to integrate new systems into the workflows that already exist and make it as streamlined as possible. But the one thing that's constant is change when you bring on new ways of managing your program's information. So before you go too far down the path of investing in tools, get some commitments from your stakeholders, your boards, your senior management. Think of these commitments as your construction bond or your casualty insurance before you start walking down the tool aisle or start putting on your carpenter's belts. All right, so now that with those things in place, you can start talking about the right tool for the job. Thing that I think we probably all have seen in the last 10 years is that programs require answers and not just data. I think it used to be that you could check the box of transparency and consistency and data-driven support systems if you just had a database. And now most conservation programs have at least one database, if not many, in their back office to run some part of their operations. But I think it's important to keep in mind that databases alone just get you data, whereas well-designed tools can get you answers. Modern conservation programs need to efficiently track activities, expenditures, accomplishments, and traditionally programs have done this for years. Often that data is just destined for an annual report or a ad hoc fact sheet for a project for your meeting with a constituent. You can get by with not all that sophisticated tools. They can be pen and paper or spreadsheets. But when you want to scale out your program to allow more people to interact and engage with it in more real-time ways, there's an opportunity there to invest in a little better tooling. And certainly for some of the folks out there, they're running programs that deal in ecosystem services and quantifying them and dealing with credits and debits. The chain of custody impacts the need to have a strong evidentiary chain is really important so that that market can flourish and have confidence. So that also kind of ups the game and will have some impacts on figuring out what the right tool for the job is. Built right, these tools can really help you scale your program. Okay, last kind of high-level concept until we start getting into some examples and some storytelling is the system of record. And the system of record is really it's a pretty simple concept. It's something that I think as system designers we take for granted, but I've learned over 15 years of building systems for folks like yourselves that this is a pretty important one for business users or conservation managers or anyone up and doing the kind of work that you guys all do, is to keep this in mind. And the system of record is it's the authoritative source. It's the source of truth for any given element within your program. It might be a project, it might be a funding source. And as tools designers, we often talk about where the CRUD happens. And by CRUD, that's create, update, and deleting of records. As the second bullet points out, you can have more than one system record within a program. You just don't want to have multiple for the same thing, because when you do that, you've got multiple places to update information. You have chances for information to diverge and be contradictory. And so just make sure that for each component of your program, just be real clear what is the system of record. The table down below is a rough sketch of types of systems of record. On the vertical axis and across the horizontal is maybe some dimensions or things to consider as you vet whether or not you've got the right system of record for the component of your project or your program. The first column really gets at the number of people that can concurrently or simultaneously be updating information in your systems. And so as you go down in sophistication, you can support more simultaneous engagement of your staff and maybe volunteers or even folks in your external partners. Next, you really want to consider about your reporting and analysis capability. A lot of folks like to combine those into one column or one dimension. I think it's important to separate out reporting from analysis, because frankly, you can get by with less of an investment if all you need to do is report. But a lot of folks need to do some analysis as well, which is kind of the essential part of an adaptive management loop. You need to be able to kind of do that synthesis and figure out how the actions on the ground need to be adjusted per the results in order to get the right result that you're looking for and obtain your outcomes. And then last is taking a look at partner and stakeholder transparency and how important is it for your partners, your funders to get close to real-time access to what's happening. So if folks have questions on that, it's a little bit of a dense topic, but happy to field some at the end.